we're talking about here not just how to do great branding in general, but how specifically to use brand to open doors that your sales team is trying to get into that are perhaps the most challenging ones. And I mean specifically enterprise execs, the ones that are simply typically out of reach and marketing isn't necessarily designed to service. And we're going to talk about number one, why this issue exists, why they're hard to reach, and why the things we typically do in marketing and even in brand don't necessarily succeed when it comes to this particular audience. What brand does as a bridge to that door, to that hard to reach place, how it kind of crosses that chasm for you to get into those hard to reach places and reach those hard to reach people, and what it looks like on the other side. What is a great brand that is designed to open those doors? What is it doing? How does it look? What kind of specific things do you need to build both beneath the surface and above the surface to actually achieve that goal of getting those audiences to tune in? And keep in mind, we're not just talking about those hard to reach audiences. You may not be an enterprise marketer, but if it could work with them, then it could work with anyone. So keep oop, there you go. Just a half a second about me. My name is Ari Yablok. I'm the head of brand at Island, a company that I joined as the first marketing hire after actually naming the company, and had the privilege for the past 4.5 years to build a brand from scratch and kind of tell its story from the very beginning and grow like crazy. And we're very fortunate to be serving a lot of the major enterprises in the Fortune 1,550, even 10, and serving many, many happy customers with an enterprise product that they use every single day. I've built a whole bunch of brands, including naming some of the ones you see here. I'm originally from New Jersey, but I live right outside Tel Aviv today. And I'm a very proud husband of one and father of seven, as you can see. So let's get into it. What is the divide? What's the problem we're facing when it comes to enterprise audiences, maybe besides the obvious? So if you look at what enterprise audiences, what executives are seeing every day when they are marketed to, whether that's on their feeds, on any sort of banner ads and search, and especially trade shows, they're looking at a lot of messages and a lot of brands that maybe their colors are different and maybe the logo and the graphics are a bit different, but the message and the action that they're trying to, being told to take are kind of the same. Actionable intelligence, unlock data-driven insights. It's a lot of similar things that don't necessarily inspire and don't convince executives why they need to care about you and not anyone else. And then AI happened, and we thought, oh, okay, great. Maybe there's something new here that we could use to market. Except what happened with AI is we just shoved AI into the same sentence. Unlock AI driven insights, AI driven insights, AI powered tools, AI driven insights, right? Our message essentially stayed the same. We just felt the need to add more in. And even if our marketing using AI has gotten better, and it's been the barrier to entry for higher quality content and assets has gone lower because we could use AI to make a lot of it. We still need to know what we're going to say and how that would be compelling to enterprise executives who have seen it all and heard it all. And this is where we have to kind of have an honest moment with ourselves about what we're doing. Because a lot of the times we as marketers and branders feel if we're putting it out there, then why wouldn't someone care? Of course they would care. Of course they would see this and want to engage, or at least that's our hope. Except enterprise executives are busy and they don't play games. They don't, scroll feeds and learn more and click here. And for the most part, they're not actively becoming leads of pretty much anything. They're either relying on their teams for that, and most of the time they're ignoring it because they assume it's irrelevant. They don't have enough time and room in their day and in their, in their mental capacity to care about what you're spending your whole day on and the product that you think is going to change everything. They simply can't care about every single new thing that comes their way, especially when it doesn't necessarily do a great job of telling you why you need to care, why they need to care. And there is a trust issue here because marketing has done a lot uh, of damage, I would say, to itself. Hopefully, that's not too controversial by making big, bold claims and not necessarily coming through on promises. The amount of executives we've heard in our conversations where uh, just platforms that claim to change everything, that claim to drive this drastic improvement, and once you install them, they don't end up doing what they say they're going to do. And there's a jadedness that comes along with that. That means even if they did care, they don't assume that it's actually going to work. So there's this healthy skepticism, or maybe unhealthy, that comes along with everything they see that's presented to them in marketing. So they're kind of right about these kind of default positions that they've taken. And it's kind of our fault because we're not really so real. We're using a lot of generic, a lot of SEO driven, whatever keyword we need to say in order to be seen. We're not really dialed into their world. We're kind of talking from our position and not necessarily from theirs, at least not nearly enough. And we're not coming off as trustworthy because we're making big bold promises and we're not necessarily capable of following through on all of them, in which case, as a category, marketing and advertising and these big graphics and big promises get ignored. And it's because our expectations don't match their reality. So if you look at this example of a company, and I don't mean to call any particular brand, so let's just focus on the tagline or the way that the message is hitting, and not necessarily the brand behind it. So you see this phrase: launch faster, convert more. So what they're telling you is that there's going to be this improvement in your life where things are going to go faster and you get to do more of what you've been trying to do. And us as marketers, we see that and we're like, great. How could someone look at that phrase and think anything bad or not valuable about it, right? You'd make more money if you launch faster and convert more. You'll save money because you'll spend less energy and time and effort and money doing what you're doing because more is coming out of it. It's super easy. Other companies, right? You see logos, you see ratings on review platforms. There are so many features that we want to show, this, that, and the other thing. There's no downside. How could it go wrong? And of course, we often tend to bring this visionary component to it of, this is where the future's headed. This is this big promise. And executives don't see the same message the same way we hope they do, because there's a reality there behind all of it that they have to deal with, even if they were motivated by your promising message that, they need to launch faster and convert more. Maybe that's a Q1, objective of theirs. But when they see this new product, they think about something else. They think, is faster really going to be faster, or like 5% faster, which is not worth my time? Will I gain features by using your product, but maybe you don't have four other features that I really need, and now I don't have those, so I just traded some, gains for losses. Will these big promises that you're saying convert more actually come true? Maybe in reality, we're just stuck on other things and it's still not going to go any faster than I wanted. Is there a better option than you that's actually going to give me 20% faster instead of 10 and I just don't know about it? Right? We're not thinking about that, but they are. And just because it works for them, does it mean it's going to work for me? Maybe yes, maybe no, but I'm a different company. I have different needs. Maybe when it shows up in my ecosystem, it's not really going to work. And then there's the kicker here, and I think we really need to meditate on this point, because when we sell software, or really when we sell anything to a business, to an enterprise, we are asking that executive, that decision maker, to really do a whole lot of things behind the scenes to make this sale possible. We're asking them to suddenly sell our product to their team, to their fellow executives, right? I need to now tell the CFO, we need to spend all this money on a new thing. And that CFO is looking at, the company budget, looking at what exists, and saying, why do we need to spend more? Or why do we need to take this out of the budget line and add that? And now they need to go sell the reason to them. That's a whole meeting that they need to set up, maybe multiple meetings. They have to get buy-in from the team. Often that team is employed just to administer the existing software, the existing product, and now they're told, no, there's a better one that they're going to have to train on, that they're going to have to know how to, figure out problems and all of that. Maybe they don't want to do that. Maybe they think otherwise, right? There's this old uncomfortable call with your old vendor. They need to now cancel or not renew an upcoming contract. That's a whole fun thing. They have to rip out the current tech, which is honestly way harder than we realize often, more often than not. They need to onboard a whole bunch of users. If we're talking about enterprises, it could be 100,000 users now need to get this email saying, hey, we're now using this thing. Or even if it's not the end users themselves, but it's the admins, right? Or it's a particular team, there could be hundreds of new users that now get this email saying there's something new. That often comes with some headache, with some tension, and then they also have to be doing their regular job, which is already too much for them. So we have to remember, like, if we're not grabbing their hearts and we're not giving them all of these other reasons to care, we're just saying more good is going to happen. We're competing against this whole list of things that are working against us. And marketing, when just a single graphic or a single tagline comes up with this hope that they're going to want to learn more or they're going to want to give us their information, we have to realize that there is a lot of downside for them spending more time on this and much less upside, at least in terms of the cost benefit, than we realize. And that's a harsh reality that we don't often want to come to terms with. But if you're close to the selling team, if you're close to those people that are in there with those executives trying to deal with those problems and those hesitations, you'll realize that that's what's on their mind all the time. And the question is, what do we do about that? How do we actually market? And I say the word marketing because branding is that, in this context, that top level of giving marketing permission to do its job, right? How do we allow marketing to actually work, which means allowing those executives or convincing those executives to be interested enough to take this journey with us, at least to see where it goes. And that bridge is brand. And brand does things that marketing can't do, that even selling can't do by getting on a cold call or cold email, because of its unique position in delivering certain core elements, core messages, and core signals to these skeptical, jaded, busy buyers that they wouldn't receive in any other context. And I want to take you through a few of these things with the disclaimer that the word brand means a lot of things to a lot of people. I am still actually trying to figure out what brand means to me because it's different for every company and even every brand department. But to me, brand is first and foremost as an infrastructure, it's the positioning, what you stand for, why you deserve a place in the market. It's who you are as an identity, which is that personality. And it's the story you tell, which is really the combination of those two things, which you could call the pitch, you could call the sales deck, you could call the homepage, but it's really kind of the soul. I like to say it's your why to your buyer. That is where it starts, and everything else comes after that. And when you do that well, when you brand, when you build the infrastructure of your brand, the identity of your brand really, really well, you set everything else up to hit, to land, to turn heads, to get someone to hesitate a little bit and say, oh, wait, tell me a little more because it feels right, because it's tried and true, it's consistent, and it's compelling. And let's talk about what that means. So first of all, your positioning. And I don't know if everyone would define positioning within the confines of brand. I see it as the core of the business of what are we saying to people for why they should consider us over anyone else. But there is no brand without understanding what you stand for. And this is something that's been tried and true in the market and something I've been using for many years already with again dozens of brands in the tech world, of finding your sweet spot. And that sweet spot can be boiled down to the thing that you do best that your customers need most and your competitors don't do, right? You see that it's right next to what your competitors do, but it's not in that circle. If your competitors also do it, then your customers could easily go to them. And if you do it well and your customers don't need it most, then you're simply not so important right now, or maybe not ever. So even if you do it well, it doesn't matter to them. So it needs to be that one thing. And the trick is, if you're like most tech companies, most SaaS, really most any B2B anything, you do a lot of things well. You do a lot of things in general, right? There is no such thing as a product that does one thing these days. So it's not as easy as it seems to find the one thing you do that you do best, your customers need most, and your competitors don't do, because it involves subtraction. It involves getting rid of a lot of things that you can also say you do, that you probably want to say as soon as possible that you do, that certainly the people building your product marketers, your engineers, your executives that talk about this all the time, they want to include, but are not going to move the needle because your customers can do them the same, or your competitors can do them just the same, or your customers just don't care enough right now. You need to find that one thing. So here's an example. If you look at AI no code app building software, which is one of the most booming and trending industries right now, you can see kind of a case study in what good positioning is versus what maybe a lack of positioning is. Lovable, and by the way, I don't want to knock Lovable. I love Lovable, and by all accounts, they are crushing it in the market. But look at their message. If you just show up, build something lovable. That's branding their own name, which has its merit on its own for another time. But the one line where in this page where you're trying to kind of zero in on why you should choose Lovable, create apps and websites by chatting with AI. That is simply what Lovable does. And if you need that and no one else does it but you, then you found the right place. You go to somewhere else like buildai.space, build custom apps like talking to a friend, which is chatting with AI, right? So that's kind of the same message. AI app building is here in Figma Make. That's basically saying do the same thing you could do anywhere else, but do it here, which I guess if you're a Figma person, that makes sense, but otherwise it doesn't. There's another one, Bolt. What will you build today? Create stunning apps by chatting with AI. So why would I choose any of these over another? Now, there are subtle answers to that based on the specific person and need, but if you're just looking at the right tool for you, I haven't been given a reason to do it. Here's another one, anything, turn your words into apps built with code. Still, again, it's just telling me what I should do. Maybe the branding is beautiful design wise. The name of the company is kind of interesting. I want to point out that they deserve credit for that. But if I'm just trying to figure out why I should choose one over the other, I'm not getting that message. Now, look at these examples. They get specific. They they take a position in the market, right? From prompt to reality is nice, it's visionary. But then if you look one level down, you're looking at very specific things that you would need that are related to business tools and apps, an internal business tool. And if you look at the prompt box, employees reserve office desks or workspaces, right? I'm already dialing into the specific thing that this software can do that others can't. Business apps with AI. If you see it here in Bubble, launch apps, not prototypes. They're taking a position in the market. Other app tools will make you a prototype that you can't really use. This one will give you a real app. That's a position in the market. Replit, I think this is my favorite one because it shows without telling, it just shows it. Make me a data tool for product managers that help communicate with their team and clients. It's beautiful because, oh, I get it. There's something very dialed in, there's something very specific. There are levels to this, and Replit allows you to do something very kind of intricate and dialed into exactly what I need for my business. And it's not just build an app by chatting with AI. So think about how that position allows them to gain an advantage as a brand because it's communicating something more meaningful and giving them a reason why they need to care about you and not others. This gives you such an invisible advantage when you're trying to reach enterprises. And the minute they're looking for something that you sell, or even not, if they come across this, they know exactly why they should choose you. Now let's talk about personality. This is an exercise I love um, doing with leaders and founding marketers. Think about these three Ryans, right? Uh, a few of them have made a pretty big name for themselves and carved out a niche in the acting world. But in the large part, if you switched one Ryan with another Ryan in a movie, there are exceptions. But if you switched one with the other, you'd probably get a similar movie, and you could probably pull it off pretty well. And what that means is these are beautiful brands, but not necessarily unique brands. Now think about these actors. These are actors where you wouldn't necessarily call them the most beautiful people in the world, no offense, but you know that if that movie has them in it, that you wouldn't be able to replace them with anyone else, whether it's their size, their personality, their voice, right? They are them unmistakably, unapologetically, undeniably. That's what a personality as a brand can give you, which again, so many brands, they have a personality, but they didn't necessarily choose it, or they chose the one that was the nicest personality, the most acceptable personality, but not necessarily the most differentiated. And there's a classic, brand archetype wheel here that many use, and I've seen 8, I've seen 16, I've even seen 24 different personalities, and some have slightly different wording than others. But if you could focus in on how each personality has a kind of a motivation, an internal motivation of theirs, what they strive for, and kind of a category that they live in, and things that they do or don't do, or things that they would say and not say, or behaviors. And if you follow it all the way through and you're consistent, you could carve out something in your market that no one else can take from you. And everyone else, if they copied it, would be considered a copycat. And think about how powerful a moat that is as a company to be able to build that, features anyone could copy nowadays. It's never been easier, but personality is really hard to copy and do it authentically. So if you see some great brands that I've found, and I'm even using some very recent examples of companies that really embraced a very specific personality. MailChimp is one of the first to do so by being, uh, you know, um, unusually conversational and human. The idea of asking a question in an ad or a tagline, we see it all the time now, but back then it was kind of crazy, right? How do you ask a question? There's no one to answer it, but it's starting a conversation, and that itself is sending a message of I'm a human, I'm just like you, and my brand will be just as familiar and approachable the same way. Torque is in the cybersecurity world. They're doing something phenomenal by kind of embracing this crazy over the top monster truck skeleton brand and making these big bold statements and embracing this rebel nature in them. Explorer brand, obviously you think of North Face or Jeep, or companies like that in the B2C world, at least, where they use energy, they use aspirations, they use geography, things to go places, to kind of round out their personality. We have Basecamp as, again, one of the OG brands of SaaS, as always trying to be funny and unexpectedly humorous in a world that is almost always trying to be corporate and buttoned up. You have the hero, Volvo being the car that is always going to be safer than everyone else. The ruler, Ramp, which is who's killing it right now. They could basically say we're on the top, right? Some businesses overspend, the rest run on Ramp. We just do it better than everyone else. Canva as a standout in terms of the creator, not just the fact that their software is creative software, but that the way they choose to present themselves is that they themselves are creators, which is obviously a way of identifying with their audience. But choosing a vertical billboard and then creating a landscape billboard is just insane. And they pull it off really well. And then when you put it together, you get to a story. And again, this is something that you have it whether you realize it or not. Just if you don't deliberately put the words together by putting your position and your personality together to build that narrative, then you are simply leaving it up to whoever your audience may be and whatever story they come up with, and that's a daunting thing, that's a scary thing to think of what story they're saying. When we tell the story our way, then we get to plant the right messages in their heads and the right identity and personality in their heads, and that's what makes it powerful. Your brand story is how you fit into their world, and that's an important point because it's not our story. It is our place in their narrative, their world and what they struggle with and what they live with day in and day out, and where we fit into that. And the minute we do that flip of our story not being, here's what we created and here's what it does and here's the benefit you get out of it. No, no, no. It's you have a certain reality. You, the customer, are dealing with certain things that go along with that reality. Some of them are going better than others. But if you're really struggling here, here's where we fit in. Story is unbelievable at bringing order to chaos. Think about literature. Literature is simply words that are put in a certain order and they become Shakespeare, right? And they become something beautiful, something that could make you emotional, that could bring you to tears just by bringing order to things that otherwise are just sounds and words, right? Color, art is just color that was arranged deliberately in a certain order in a certain way that could bring you back into your childhood, that could help you escape reality. Music is noise, sounds that were simply arranged in a certain order that can, rock your world. And that's what story is. I have all kinds of problems. I have all kinds of things going on in my life as an executive, more than ever, more than anyone else and more than ever before. And me giving you a before, middle, and after and doing it better than anyone in your market allows that executive to understand the sequence that they're in and say, "Oh, I do have this problem. Oh, I can't fix it with what I have right now. Oh, I need you as the way to fix that problem." Suddenly, I see the order that I need to follow. I see that. The substitution principle of why story works is also an important concept that I'll go through very quickly because I want to get to the other side of this. Um, we often, or I should say always, when we're making buying decisions, and executives are no different, don't have every single piece of information we need. When's the last time we bought something knowing every angle and every possible review and feature? Ultimately, if you don't have the software, demoed it, even if you've demoed it, you don't know for sure how it's going to go. And what we do is we try and find the answers we think will be closest to reality, and then we go with them. But often, when we don't have those answers, we substitute the questions. And this comes from the world of behavioral economics, from Thinking Fast and Slow of Daniel Kahneman. And here's an example. Will the Cowboys win the Super Bowl? America's team, right? Well, how could I know that? I don't know the future. All I know is their record today, and they could win the next game or lose the next game, or get blown out in the first round of the playoffs, or get all the way to the Super Bowl. So, what do I substitute that hard question with? An easy question: do I love the Cowboys? And if I love the Cowboys, then yeah, they're going all the way. They're going to win this year. How healthy is my marriage? Yikes! Don't want to go there. Hard to answer. There might be lots of years of information, of data to go on. So, what do I do with that question? I think of, well, how was dinner last night? Did it go well? Were there laughs? Was there the same argument that happened over and over again? Was it unusually quiet or was it calm and cool? That's how I'm usually going to answer that question. Should I get a Mac or a PC? Now we're in the tech world. Well, in fact, they've done a good job at helping me substitute a different, more important question, which was, which one makes me feel cooler? And we know how that story went in the ad from 20-ish years ago, right? So when an enterprise exec is looking at different options and they're saying, which one do I go with? They're not necessarily going to go with the best answer because they don't know the best answer, but they're going to go with the question that they can answer, which is, how do I feel about those guys? Or do I really like them? Or all of the sum total of how I feel and what I've seen and the impression that I've gotten, that I could answer. And that's what story allows us to do through creative brand storytelling. And there are frameworks that we've used, and I could share this with you guys after, or you could DM me, or I'll send this out to whoever needs, of how we tell that story, how we get people to see themselves in their own story and where we fit in. there's starting with the problem, there's starting with the old game to the new game, and there's even starting with just the opportunity, the dream scenario. And this is where all of that kind of comes to fruition. And with the time we have left, I want to show you some of the work that I've done or that I admire of how brand has successfully infiltrated the minds of those hard to reach people that have got them to to react and to feel open to taking calls, and even after those calls, to going through that buyer journey to shorten those sales cycles because they feel good about all of this, because it all checks out and it all starts with those impressions and those signals they got towards the beginning. And that's that third element of trust. And we're going to get to that at the end. So we did the real, right? That was the first issue of marketing. We're about to do relevant. What does it mean to be relevant? And then we're going to do trust. Here is the story that I recently came up with for Island's enterprise browser, and it's again your world, where you fit in, where we fit into it, and what the other side looks like.
What is a browser? It's where we browse the web, right? Unless we're at work, then it's our workspace. But is it really? The browser was made for consumers, not enterprises. So we add all this to it and call it a workspace, even though it's not. But what if the browser was built for the enterprise from the start? This is Island, the enterprise browser, designed for work from the inside out. All your apps are right here on your company homepage. But did you notice what's not here? No agents or proxies, no backhaul traffic, no virtual desktops, no moving parts whatsoever. Because everything you need is already inside. With Island, you see and secure all browser activity, control how and where your data flows, and optimize your entire workspace without getting in the way of work itself. Which means call center reps freely access the customer info they need, while the info they don't stays safe by design. Contractors just install Island, log in, and get to work. No more shipping laptops. And remote workers access internal apps on any device, anywhere. So BYOD is actually a thing now. But that's just the beginning. It can automate your workflows, spot poor performing web apps, help your users do more work without doing more work, and so much more. This is Island. In some ways, it's just one small change. But sometimes, changing one thing changes everything.
Cool, that was fun. So that's the story that I created that really followed that structure of this is your world, this is where we fit in. And if you buy in and if it resonates, and we tried to get very specific with the problems you have, with the features that speak directly to the pain points we knew our customers had, so it's specific enough that it's real, then they get it. And here's the brand we built from the start. Like I told you, I was fortunate to have come from the beginning of naming the company, and the name has the story of a place that is safe by design, but also free and not behind walls. And that's really the idea of Island. This isn't really about us, but it's about showing you the depth of uh, uh, of uh, where we went to try and build story and identity into everything we did. The logo is the look from the island, the horizon, the future coming. This is the way work should be. There's a Zen feel to it. We did a lot of personality and identity work at the start of who we are, of what we believe in, of how that impacts our behavior, the way we talk, the way we interact with executives, the type of personalities we associate ourselves with, our tone of voice, with very specific examples of how we wanted to not sound like a corporation, but sound like a colleague, and yet show you that there is a very big story behind all of this, with it being a new kind of conversation. And a lot of this had to do with the words we wouldn't say. We're not going to use the phrases you've heard everywhere before, like threats and risk and landscape and transformation. We're going to use short, conversational, real human language, but in the context of your job and your needs. Our visual identity was robust, was deep. We thought of this place, this happy place that you want to be at work, where everything just is put in the right place. And we thought of like a Zen garden where there's symmetry, there's balance, there's the right, contrast of things that I need and in the right place, and everything is kind of rounded, no edges, no corners. And here's some of the idea, the way that that's played out for us, and we're constantly evolving. So this isn't even, where it is today, for the most part. But as you see, it's the workplace you want to be. It's the ideal. It's words like natural next step, the word natural nature, inside out for the enterprise. These are not necessarily corporate jargon, and that's all been deliberately done. Another part to this is, ooh, let's see here. Um, I'm not gonna show you that. That's our brand experience, like, at trade shows, but I think you get the picture. The relevance that we use, which is dialing into their world to the point where they clearly see that we know them. So there's something called VDI, virtual desktops. This is what a lot of people who work in banks and hospitals and call centers and contractors, they don't just work on a computer on a browser like us. They have to download a virtual desktop or log into a virtual desktop, which is a streaming version of a computer that is somewhere on a server far away. And usually their mouse is 2 seconds behind, and they're on some old version of Windows, and it could freeze in the middle, and they only have certain apps and they can't download or upload anything because it's not the actual computer they're on, and it's very frustrating. And I wanted to tap into that pain point of what it means to work on a virtual desktop by showing them it just freezes in the middle, right? I'm writing you to wish you farewell, the breakup letter to VDI. Turn that into an entire video. Your VDI, I see that we're out of time, but the breakup letter, and you get the point there. And here's something that we made to show you how relevant we are to our customers. Another real example, we did with healthcare and we do with others. In terms of using AI to our advantage, another big part of what makes us authentic and real and dialed in and relevant is our thought leadership. We use the voices of our executive leaders and our top sellers, and they don't have time either. They are executives themselves. So I built an AI engine where I have a 15 to 20-minute conversation with them. I'd use the transcript and the AI summary and whatever materials are relevant to the conversation, the topic that they had, which is usually a conversation they had earlier in the week. I have it draw from Island's messaging, their executive tone of voice, the knowledge base of Island, and the outline, the structure that we like to follow for a blog. And it pumps out a draft that is so good that they really just, a tweak of a word here and there, and it's ready to go. And that is an unlock for our thought leaders to get in front of our sellers before they even meet them, which is a great thing for us. We're also using our own publishing. We're our own publishing site called New Tab, where we get executives, which are hopefully future buyers, to publish about topics that are important to them and featuring them for CXOs by CXOs, right? Their stories. And we got some great feedback. The bottom there is a CISO of a huge company that we all know that says, "Oh, this is a place where I feel like the articles are actually speaking to me because they're written by people I respect." It's a really cool hack that you guys should think of, and that trust is the last component. And I'll end with this: when you use brand, because a lot of people don't necessarily think about brand as essential. It's the icing on the cake, right? But the business is the cake. But it's also the first thing you see. When you see a cake, you first see the icing. And what that means is it's the most important impression that you could have that convinces someone, not only do I care or should I spend time, but what do I feel about this brand? What do I feel about everything that comes behind it? The way that you meet a first date, or you meet anything, a first day at school, a first teacher. Design implies a designer. When something is done really well, when a lot of thought was put into every little pixel, and that's the last 10% that you heard about in the introduction, it implies that we put that same amount of thought into everything else. And when you give that impression, so someone says, okay, if they cared this much about the first impression, their product is probably killer, right? the way they do business is probably really well done. And there are exceptions where companies over deliver on marketing and brand and under deliver on tech and customer and all of that. But usually that impression leads to that assumption that everything else was done well, right? If they cared this much about the napkins or about, the way they presented themselves, they probably care about everything else. And you have to understand, when we're talking about executives, these transactions, when you're buying software, it's not just I'm buying a product. I'm really buying a contract. That means there's a support team. There are individuals that I'm going to be even texting with and golfing with and seeing a lot more than most other people, right? Because this is the software I'm using all the time. That relationship is important. And therefore, if you use these brand signals to communicate who you are, it will allow them to be open to having a longer relationship with you because they want to be around you because they care. It's the feeling of knowing, like we said, the substitution principle. If I feel like I know this brand, that I know that this will work, even if I don't have all the data I need to make that decision, that feeling of knowing is what's going to get them to buy. It's what's going to get them to maybe before that open the door and let you in. And that's really all that brand is for, right? So it's your position, identity, and story that makes you real, as opposed to just being fake or like every other company trying to sell the same thing with data driven insights. It's your attention to that last detail and the story that you know about their world, right? And the ways that you apply that to your creative assets and to your experience, that makes you relevant to them. And that thought leadership aspect, that's what makes you relevant to them. And the way you present yourself, going that last 10%, being deliberate, implying there's a designer behind everything we do, that you want that you're the type of brand that you should strike up a long-term relationship with. That's what gets them to trust you. These all are the bridge that executives need to overcome their skepticism and their lack of trust, and they're feeling like I don't have time for this, and I could care less. So hopefully you took some examples and some principles here that you could apply to your own brand building, whether you're selling to executives or anyone else. And thanks for spending the time. I hope this was helpful, and I'd love to connect on LinkedIn or anywhere else. And good luck on the journey ahead.
Ari, thank you so, so much for this presentation. I think my mind is still blown. I'm still, even though I've seen your deck many times before, and to now actually have you walk us through all of this, I think what I'm taking away from this is really, of course, other than the three Ryans, did need a always good to have that reminder in my brain. But what I'm really taking away from this is the fact that when you're showing up with audiences that are really not very receptive to marketing, are potentially even allergic to marketing, right? You really need to be able to get them to understand that you know them well and that you understand them and their problems well. And I think once we are able to do that, half the battle really is won. And there was a question that was coming to me as you were speaking. There's a lot of people tend to think that large parts of this brand building exercise, right? And of course, you work at a large company. How realistic is it for small teams, for teams that are, a lot of the folks in the audience today are possibly solo marketers. They're the only marketers in their team. They probably have a small design team, if at all. How important or how realistic is it, do you think, for them to sort of be able to create this kind of a large impression when it comes to their brand?
I could be biased here, but in my experience, sometimes all you need is the right words. You cutting through the noise. There is almost it's almost hard to define the value of being able to say something that actually resonates without even needing to find an expensive agency to design it, but to just matter to someone. And I think that's where you start. And I've had founders who have zero marketers, right? They're just starting up. They just got their seed round, and we get on the phone and they're like, "What do I do first?" I said, "Just talk about what you know to be the most relevant thing to your audience. Uh, maybe hire a freelancer to figure out how to say that creatively." And it's never been easier with Nano Banana Pro and whatever else you want to use to turn that into something visually engaging and lean on AI. And it continues to blow my mind what it can actually produce for you um, when you give it the relevant stuff to work with. And I make that point very clear. Give it the right stuff to work with, and it will produce for you what you need. So I would just start with that. Start very simply. You don't need to do it all right now. You just need to start being relevant and meaningful. And the great news is, and I hope this is not offensive to anyone, you are in a world where most of the market is not meaningful and not particularly differentiated in their messaging, which means they are not landing. And it makes the world noisy, but it also creates a gap, an opportunity for you to be refreshingly relevant with just a few words and just a few posts here and there and an article here and there, and you're already on your way.
Fantastic. Refreshingly relevant, I think, is going to be my word for 2026. And on that note, I know, Ari, we could hear you for another hour, but unfortunately, that's all we've got time for today. We are going to go into a quick 10-minute break before we start our next session with Adam Holmgren, who is going to be talking to us about something that Ari just hinted at, which is building a founder-led brand. So stay tuned. We're going to be back after a quick break. Ari, thank you so very much for sharing the 3 rounds. For sharing your fabulous presentation. This was extremely insightful, and I'm hoping that everybody is taking away at least a few leaves from your book today. We're very, very grateful for your time.